Greatness. Greatness. Greatness.
All I heard was last one, and I did not get that. Come on!
That's good.
And I do think that whenever you get an international team against an American team, they want to compete. And you've got some young guys who I think want to prove something out here.
You have traveled the world over the last several decades. What has it been about the international growth of basketball that you've seen?
You know, basketball is now a global sport, obviously, dating back to 1992 and the Dream Team. Now, on every continent, basketball is a huge, exciting and embraced sport. And then part of it is that anybody can play. You need a hoop and a basket. And so in that way, it's a lot.
Here, the Obamas was here. Did that give you any extra motivation to play any harder tonight?
Yeah, for sure. You always got to put on the show for he my favorite person in the world. We was kicking it yesterday. Me and him, I had a great time yesterday. So I told him I was going to put on the show for him.
I know you've met him before, but the President Obama was here.
Yeah. Bunch of business and all this stuff here. Like,
why?
It's beyond my pay grade. They want to shut down.
So whose pay grade is it? So who's shutting this down if it's not you? It's from the city. The city is shutting this down for no reason. The music was during the day. It's 8 o'clock. So if the music was a problem, what's the next problem? But these other people doing events too. They all have permits. And they have. Did they shut their music down? In LA, we're just trying to have an event, a panel, talking about culture, talking about future, talking about leadership. And for whatever reason, I feel like we're being targeted. We had some cool stuff planned. I'm trying to just end. My apologies to y'all. We have some great people. Well, Russell's here. We got streamers here. We got other people here to talk about what the future is. And I feel like we're being targeted right now. 7 p.m. It's not 2 a.m. It's not 3 a.m. It's not 12. It's literally 7 p.m. And we're getting shut down from doing a panel talking about leadership and culture. So I don't understand what the reasoning is, but I'm trying to get some answers. But it seemed like some people are already pissed off. He doesn't really have the answers.
You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers, Sway.
He was sent to act on ordinance of Beverly Hills. I know I play for the Celtics, and I know we in LA, but hey, I didn't think y'all was gonna do me like this. So apparently we got to get up out of here. We about to shut it down. I appreciate y'all. Apologize for y'all streaming around the world. My man right here, officer, he was the one in charge. So he's the one that is shutting us down at 7 p.m. I guess I'm gonna see you guys next time, man. Some bullshit. My apologies to y'all.
Woo, what a weekend. What a weekend. Good morning and welcome to Black Press USA's morning show, Morning Pod, where we bring you the headlines in the culture. Mo Kelly is back, and All-Star Weekend was in LA, Mo Kelly, and it was off the chain.
I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Thought it was off the chain. I thought it was a far cry from what it used to be in the early 2000s when it was almost like a Super Bowl party here in the city. And this time around, it was largely not that. The prices, from what I understand, were way too high for people to actually go to a lot of the events. You might have seen the empty seat stories about the All-Star Challenge as far as the three-point competition, the Rising Stars Challenge, and so forth. It didn't have the same type of magnetic aura that we've seen because LA has hosted the NBA All-Star Weekend a number of times in the past 25 to 30 years. It didn't have that type of level of interest and magic, not only as far as within the city, but inside the venue. But we'll get into that. I think it's a far cry from what it used to be, at least as in terms of LA interest.
Okay, well, I might disagree a little bit about that. But that was Jaylen Brown. Let's go over some of those clips. That was Jaylen Brown from the Celtics. As you saw, his party got shut down at 7 o'clock, and it wasn't a party. Like he said, it was a panel discussion, but it was in Beverly Hills. So that was the issue. You saw Anthony Davis, who was the MVP of the game, right?
Yes.
And of course, I think the conversation was the Obamas were in town, and they were everywhere this weekend. I mean, Michelle Obama was with the WNBA. You saw President Obama. He was with Allen Iverson over at the Grammy Museum for the R&B sing-off. I mean, they were just everywhere, and everybody was loving them. And the one thing that didn't happen to him that happens to Donald Trump, every sports event he goes to, the Obamas didn't get booed. They got standing ovations.
That has to do with the legacy of President Obama as far as being relatable, approachable, very humane in the way that he deals with people. There are people who've not agreed with him, and he hasn't shut them down. He has shown empathy in everything that he's done. And he's a person of the community. When I say community, I'm talking about the African-American community, where he is still representing us. He still feels a part of us. And in turn, we have continued to embrace him. He's not someone who's unrelatable and unapproachable. He's someone who you think that you know on some level. You feel as a family member, and you welcome family.
Right. And Nancy Wall, thanks for the correction. That was Anthony Edwards, not Davis. Yeah, Davis got traded, and he's pissed about that. So I was able to get out a little bit. I know here at Crenshaw have the Nike activation, which was very popular around the young people. Juju Watkins had the Love and Basketball recreation with Sanaa Lathan and Omar Epps. I attended Councilwoman Heather Hutt's block party for the retired NBA players, and they had Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, which was amazing. I got an opportunity to go to the HBCU All-Star game, and that was so much fun. I felt like I was in school days, just the whole vibe. So LA was on fire. But it was probably a little different from the past because everything was spread out. We were like from downtown to Inglewood to Beverly Hills. So everything was pretty much spread out. But for the most part, I thought it was a win for the city.
I think a distinction can be made. It could be a win for the city, but not necessarily the windfall and type of event that elevated the NBA. The activations which were available to the public, yes, there were many more activations, but if you think of the NBA All-Star Weekend and its presentation, on NBC and Peacock, it wasn't as well received. The slam dunk competition was not what you would want it to be. Like, for example, the NBA is trying to balance this idea of history and the importance of the event with also keeping it new and fresh. And not all of it is available to everyone, but they're still trying to find their footing as far as what makes ratings in the sense of people will tune in versus what people will participate in around the city.
A lot of people say that LeBron ruined the All-Star game. What are your thoughts when you hear people say that?
That's an age-old debate, which doesn't necessarily have just to do with LeBron. It has to do with aging players, is whether they are taking the focus and also an all-star appearance away from a younger, arguably more deserving player. But that's the catch-22 for the league, because the league wants LeBron James because he brings eyeballs and interest that some of the younger players cannot. They don't have the type of visibility, the notoriety, the cachet that will get people to tune in, because at the end of the day, it is most importantly to the league, a television event, a broadcast and streaming event. And so they want to be able to demonstrate that there are numbers of people watching for advertisers, that they're commanding such prices for ads.
That's true. Dr. Marilyn says, I miss the old school dunks like Vince Carter and Michael Jordan. And speaking of Michael Jordan, who was absent because he was at NASCAR. And a story coming out of that is how he sued NASCAR, skipped the All-Star weekend, and won the Daytona 500. So Michael Jordan is on a whole nother level.
Michael Jordan has been an enigma for the most part because during his playing career, he was not really vocal on social issues. He was not as visible as the league may have wanted him to be at that time. And since he's left the league, he's had a role as an owner and general manager, but he really hasn't had a voice, a real recognizable voice in promoting the league. He, as you said, he's gone on the NASCAR. He's won the Daytona 500, and NBC tried to get him on as an announcer or a contributor, and that wasn't as well received as they thought because Jordan is not as expressive or going to give as much as other previous NBA athletes. And even though he's the most successful NBA player in history as a multi-billionaire at this point, he has not been the league advocate that many would have hoped he would have been.
Right. Because, a lot of people thought that he would be sitting at the desk with the other sports commentators, and he was doing something totally different, like a one-on-one type situation. And so maybe they'll still develop that out, produce that out, and it'll be better next season. I don't know.
Well, he has to be willing to. Michael Jordan doesn't do anything that he doesn't want to do in a media sense in 2026. If he wants to have more of a role, he will have more of a role.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's jump into our morning poll since we're talking about sports. And chat, we want you to be honest. Which sport have you actually enjoyed watching? We have a lot that has happened within the past 2 weeks. So is it A, the Super Bowl, Bad Bunny, and all the good stuff? Is it B, the NBA All-Star Weekend, new format, Anthony Edwards, the Obamas? We didn't even talk about Brandy and her beautiful rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. Or is it C, the Winter Olympics, the personalities, making history, and Snoop Dogg? What has been your favorite sports to watch over the past 2 weeks? Let us know in the chat. Is it A, Super Bowl, B, NBA All-Star, or C, the Winter Olympics? Did you get a chance to catch Brandy and her Star Spangled Banner rendition?
I did. And Brandy as a musician is probably very underrated as a singer and as a performer. I did get a kick out of, it was an a cappella performance, and I know enough about music, and this is a slight critique. It's a slight critique. That all the voices were hers because they were layered vocals. She was basically singing her own background vocals. It was pre-produced, and you could tell that the singers she had were not actually singing that rendition. It was a beautiful rendition, but it was basically lip synced. Let me just put that out.
Let the air out the bubble, Mo Kelly.
Hey, I just got to be honest. So what you were seeing was not exactly what you were hearing, but it was a beautiful rendition. I will definitely say that.
Yeah, her vocals are out of control. And just the outfits, the presentation, I just thought she did an excellent job. Chat, y'all not chiming in. What's up? What do you enjoy? Oh, I see. I was further down. So we get some B's, which is the All-Star game. Dr. Marilyn is saying Super Bowl. Mike D is saying D. He gave a thumbs down to all three. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I can see that.
Orange G said, go ahead.
No, because I had tuned into the Super Bowl because I was looking forward to seeing Bad Bunny, but it was a bad football game. So the totality experience, inclusive of the bad commercials, it was not all that great. NBA All-Star Weekend, we were discussing some of the highs and lows, the pluses and minuses, and we haven't really touched on the Olympics. But I don't know if there's been one event that has been geared to African Americans. NBA All-Star Weekend was, but also had the quality of presentation and product that kept our interest throughout.
All right. And Orange G, he doesn't care anything about anything except Mardi Gras. He said, I saw nothing wrong with All-Star Weekend. Between Mardi Gras and All-Star Weekend, we had a great time. The Zulu Ball didn't miss. So the Zulu Ball happened this weekend. We know tomorrow is Fat Tuesday. So get all your sinning out, because come Wednesday, it's Ramadan and it's Ash Wednesday, okay? So get it all out these next 48 hours. That's not funny. That's funny to me. Because I'm participating tomorrow on Fat Tuesday. I'll be at H&B's, Mo Kelly. I'll be at Harold Hills tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Let's jump into our first story. You guys can keep chiming in on what has been your favorite sports activity so far. But let's head to Florida, where Uncle Luke aka Luther Campbell, announces he's running for Congress. Now, the former leader of the group, 2 Live Crew, announced his plans to run this midterm during an appearance on Local 10 News. And so Campbell is 65. He ran for office once before in 2011 special election for Miami-Dade County mayor. And he finished with 11%. That's not bad. But what are your thoughts of Luke wanting to run for Congress?
There's a conversation about Luther Campbell, the person running for office, and there's the larger conversation about the celebrity culture and its intersection with politics and elected leaders. It's not anything new as far as the larger conversation about how celebrity culture and politics have come closer and closer together over the years, saying nothing of having a reality show host as president, not once, but twice. But celebrity culture combined with social media, it allows someone to reach more people more easily than ever before. So it would make sense in terms of voting, in terms of civic issues, that someone who already commands a sizable base through the celebrity as a singer, actor, producer, or whatever, would then possibly segue into politics. Now, specifically about Luther Campbell, I am encouraged by his candidacy because if you know anything about Luther Campbell, especially in the most recent 20, 30 years, he has been engaged on a local level. He's not coming out of just nowhere and saying, I think I'll wake up today and run for office. No, if you are in that Miami-Dade County area, you know about Luther Campbell and his work in the community. So this is not necessarily new. I don't know whether he can win because I'm not on the ground there. But I don't question his sincerity as far as why he's doing this. He's not necessarily doing this to elevate himself. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Here in Los Angeles, we have a mayoral race going on, and one of the candidates is a Republican, Spencer Pratt, who's a reality TV show personality who just dropped a tell-all book, and he's more interested in promoting his book than actually being serious about the issues of Los Angeles. Yes, he was someone who lost his home in the fires, but his focus is not as much on the city as it is more on his personal self-aggrandizement. So there's a distinction to be made here. What Luther Campbell is doing in South Florida is very different than what's happening here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw maybe about a month or so ago, he made a post about Natalie Nunn. I don't know if you know who Natalie Nunn is. She is the brainchild behind Baddies on Zeus. I think it's a very problematic show, women fighting each other and half naked. But I found it interesting that he would critique Natalie Nunn, and he said that she was pimping these women. And I was like, isn't that calling the kettle black? Because
Uncle Luke is Uncle Luke for a reason. And I say this, not to hype myself up, but to say, like, I've been to a Luther Campbell 2 Live Crew party back in the day, many, many years ago. His history cannot be denied as far as where he was in terms of the larger discussion about censorship in media and images and the betrayal of women and the depictions of women, which are very questionable and problematic. So that cannot be overlooked or just overshadowed. But at the same time, I think what he's doing now is much more consistently positive in relation to where he came from.
Right. I mean, and let's not forget that he did go to court back in the day for his music for censorship, and he won to have freedom of speech to sing those provocative songs. But Dr. Chuck Marilyn says, why would Luke want to put his past on the line? Women are going to come out of the woodworks. Shaking my head. Mike V says, from Daisy Dukes to the Affordable Care Act, Luther for Congress. Big Cheese says, Uncle Luke, strip club. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if he'll be able to, well, put it this way. You have a 34 count felon as the president. I mean, what are we really talking about here?
But you make a great point. There's pre-Donald Trump and post-Donald Trump. Now, I'm not going to push aside that there are rules for some and there are rules for others as far as could a 34 count felony convicted felon of Barack Obama run for president and win? Absolutely not. You know, there's certain things that we will never be able to do as Black folks. But at the same time, I'm not going to only look at Luther Campbell through the lens of his past and acknowledge where he has been maturing and growing. And you can make another case for Snoop Dogg. Some things people like, some things people don't like. But where he came from to what he's doing now and his work in the community with his football league, and there are a lot of good things that Snoop has been doing, and I'm not going to only judge him by what he used to be or where he came from.
That is true. And let's move to the next story since we're talking about elections and Donald Trump briefly. And so checks are not in the mail, y'all. But we'll get to that one next. Donald Trump is adamant about making a national voter ID requirement official ahead of the midterms. So the U.S. president shared his plans, you see right there, to enforce the voter ID in his new Truth Social post. Now, social media snippets, he revealed how he intends to make the legislation happen through an executive order. I mean, he could do an executive order, but isn't that up to the states? Or can he really force a national vote? Can he do that?
It's a great question. It's a very simple answer. He cannot. The Constitution is clear that elections, as far as the time and place and the manner of the elections, are the purview of the states. It's in the Constitution. It's unambiguous. It's inarguable. The president does not have that power. The question is what lengths this president will go in trying to enforce this executive action. Does that include ICE at the polls? This is an intimidation tactic. Does that mean that he will implement other things as far as to make sure that Black people and other people, non-Republicans, non-supporters, are less inclined to come out to vote? That's something he could do to impact the elections. But as far as legally, no executive order is law, and any executive order in direct contradiction to the Constitution ultimately will fail in the courts. But we also know how slowly the courts may move. And in terms of the election, I don't put anything past this president who wants to maintain power for himself and for his party. And since the midterms are increasingly looking like they're going to go in the direction of the Democrats, at least on the House level, then it's very important to consider what this president may do to impact elections, to thwart elections, or somehow prolong the certification process after the elections.
Right. Yeah. Nasty Wall says he just throws out stuff that he doesn't even know about. It's like, yeah, throw the spaghetti up on the ceiling and whatever sticks, that's what we're doing. But we have seen with Republicans that all it needs to start is with the conversation. We've seen what they've done with the term critical race theory. That didn't have anything to do with K through 12. And we saw what that conversation has done. It began the erasure of Black history, the attempt to, in this country. So we definitely are going to pay attention. You brought up ICE, and that's why I brought up checks a little earlier. So checks are not in the mail. ICE agents are facing the reality that Trump and his administration lied. Now, the Department of Homeland Security received over 200,000 applicants and hired more than 12,000 agents so far. Now, ICE agents are airing some of their internal grievances on social media. Many of them are accusing the agency of failing to honor its promise of a $50,000 sign-up bonus and of working without paychecks or health care.
Imagine that. The administration lied. The administration which said you're going to get a $5,000 Doge check. The administration which said you're going to get a $2,000 rebate check. The administration which said, actually on the heels of the previous Trump administration, said Mexico would build the wall. There are all these lofty promises which may sound good to his supporters, but are not actually realistic. They're not legal in many aspects, going back to the executive actions and executive orders. And here you are, people who have been spurred on by the racism of ICE. And let's be honest, let's call it for what it is. It's not about deporting the worst of the worst. It's about getting rid of brown and black people. When I say and black people, I'm talking about Haitians in Ohio. I'm talking about black people, Somalis in Minnesota. So this has everything to do with the depiction of who is an American. And that is very easy to sell to America as far as get rid of the black and brown people. So many people would sign up. And if you would throw in just a carrot of a $50,000 sign up bonus and health benefits, then sure, you're going to get more than enough people to apply and even work for some degree amount of time. We know that the Department of Homeland Security is shut down right now due to a funding increase, which is not being passed. And people need to be clear. That doesn't only impact ICE. It impacts the TSA. It impacts federal facilities, impacts federal benefits and people who may not be reporting to work, and also you may adversely affect us as Americans.
Right. And I think another point that we should also bring up is how this whole situation is lining the pockets and fattening the pockets of the prison industry. Because some of those brown people, they want to be in these detention centers that are ran by privatized prisons known as GEO and Core Civic. And so this isn't just about deporting people. It's about fattening the pockets of privatized prisons. And that can't be forgotten, because once they get rid of all of the undocumented immigrants, they're going to come after black folks. That's how they got their pockets fat last time. And let's be clear, those beds need to be filled, because each bed is a price tag. And so if it ain't them, it's going to be us.
Yeah, the immigration enforcement is not going to go on forever, or at least not going to go on at the rate and intensity that is presently going on. And those facilities are not temporary facilities. They're being built as permanent facilities. And to your point, Neil, they're going to have to be used and utilized for some group of people. And that means it's most likely going to be us.
Right. So pay attention to that. And you touched on this, and we're going to take a slight deeper dive. Homeland Security departments have shut down as Democrats and Trump negotiate the changes of what we were just talking about. Now, the White House and Senate Democrats have been trading offers on changes to DHS and ICE after 3 Americans were killed, one in Los Angeles, 2 in Minneapolis. Now, DHS funding formally lapsed on Saturday midnight, and that means that federal employees at agencies such as FEMA, the Transportation Security Administration, and the Coast Guards won't be paid, though most of them will continue showing up for work because their jobs are considered critical and, of course, essential. Now, what we have seen over the weekend, in the past few days, is ICE is pulling out of Minneapolis, and our Congress member Nanette Berrigan said that they have actually pulled out of Terminal Island here in Los Angeles, but she doesn't know if they have just moved to another location. But I really don't think that this means anything. I saw Toussaint Morrison talking about them pulling out of Minneapolis, but they're still there. And this is showing you that, okay, they're trying to act as if they're withdrawing because they want that funding. But I think the Democrats should be very careful about giving Trump and this administration what they want, because they know how to play games, and sometimes they play them better than Democrats. So I wouldn't just think that, oh, we won, let's give them the funding. I think we need a little more information.
You touch upon something which is so very important. This is not a win. This is more like a delay. Although DHS may be pulling back and pulling out of certain cities, number one, it is for the funding. So you want to put on a good face. You don't want to do anything, if you're the Republicans or President Trump, to get in the way of the funding. And after the funding comes back, I'm quite sure you will see another ramp up of these similar tactics in different cities. Even though outside of California, the 2 states with the largest number of undocumented immigrants is Texas and Florida, you're not hearing about any ICE raids in those states. And you know that those are 2 governors between DeSantis in Florida and Abbott in Texas who would bend over backwards to help ICE and assist ICE in everything they're doing. But you're not hearing about these types of raids and tactics in those states. That's not by mistake. That's by design, because they don't want to bring that unrest to Republican friendly quadrants. And so, yes, there's a pullback and a pull out, but it's only temporary until they get what they want on the other side of this funding.
Let's jump into this next story where reports reveal Greg Brockman, who is the co-founder and president of ChatGPT's parent company, OpenAI, him and his wife, Anna, made massive donations to President, I don't never say president, but Donald Trump and MAGA, their super PAC equaling $25 million. Now, Brockman's exposure is just another example of some of the world's most prominent tech leaders getting on the president's good side. Now, American voters witnessed Amazon, Jeff Bezos. We saw him give Melania a ton of money. And then, of course, Meta's Mark Zuckerberg cheering Trump during the inauguration. But what I find interesting about this story is that they're talking about this guy named Greg Brockman, but Larry Ellison, who is also affiliated with OpenAI, he's more involved with Donald Trump than this guy. And why is there no talk about him? His son, they own BitDance. His son runs CBS. And so I just find it interesting how they pick and choose who they want to go after, when to me, the bigger person to banish is Larry Ellison. He's dangerous.
Yeah, it's very clear that this is not about controlling news per se. It's inclusive of it. It's about controlling media, but not only about that, it's about controlling information and reality as we perceive it, as far as what is real, what is not real, what is actually news, who is the victor, and then the victors go the spoils as far as telling history, how Black people are going to be remembered, for example. And it's not just about political power. You saw what happened with Jimmy Kimmel and the FCC, how the FCC is now taking an outsized role in, at least verbally, picking winners and losers, who is not going to be investigated, to your point, as to who is going to be investigated. The Republicans call for an investigation of Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show. For what? Right. But it's indicative of how powerful people are working together for their own personal interests, above and beyond just Donald Trump. But you can see how this proletariat, if you will, my word, this super class of billionaires is now going to lead us into the future, separate and distinct from Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not going to be in office much longer. I don't believe his health will allow him to be in office. But you're seeing this ruling class put its hooks into all forms of media and information, which will transcend the Trump administration. And let me just say very quickly, people are not paying attention when you're talking about AI and social media and these billionaires, and you have Elon Musk with X, and you have Mark Zuckerberg with Meta, which is inclusive of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, and a number of other AI components, Gemini, and so forth. You're seeing that if you're not careful, this new world can be used against you. Niele, if I can, very quickly.
Well, I wanted to get into, you brought up Meta, and I want to talk about what has happened to you over the past few days.
Yeah, this is very serious, and I don't consider myself a victim. I think of myself as a cautionary tale. I have a hate relationship with social media. I don't like it at all. I think it's fake. I think it's largely racist against us. What I mean by that is people will call me N-words and all stuff and thing every single day, and you report the accounts and nothing happens. You can be anonymous and say just about whatever you want, and you can't get anyone banned. Past couple of days, I lost my Threads and Instagram account simultaneously after what I think I can only guess, because I wasn't given the actual supposed offending post, after supposedly sexualizing children or posting some sort of child porn, and my accounts were taken. That's something I would never do. I work with children. But the point is, there is no review, redress, or recourse. I can show you the message which was given by Meta. I've lost the account. They've completely deleted the information, everything I had, and I can't even challenge it or ask for a review. And you think, well, what's so bad about that? Also in the message, it said that it would be reported to the federal authorities. In other words, there would be some sort of investigation or report made about some alleged offending post I made that I can't even see, I'm not even aware of, and I can promise you I would never make. How does that affect me? Well, I was an original checkmark profile, not one where you just go on Meta and buy one. That means that they have my driver license, they have my official information. And if there were a federal report or some sort of information which was sent to the federal government in this time, in this day and age, I don't know of the unintended consequences of how it may affect me in the future. I've served on a federal grand jury as far as dealing with child porn cases. This is nothing to be messed with. And you have a situation where my future life, having nothing to do with me, could be negatively impacted over a post that I've never seen. I can't even tell you whether my accounts were hacked because I can't log into them and see if there were any new devices are added. In other words, it's such a closed system, I can't rule in or rule out that there weren't other nefarious forces. I am notoriously anti-Trump and very public in that. Who's to say that that was not a role in it? You know, who's to say? And the warning is you have to be very careful about social media because it has everything on you and you have no control over what it can do to you.
Orange G says Meta is trash, and it is sad to say it is Africans in Africa doing the reviews of your account. That is why I block trolls and keep my account private. And we're so caught up in this is a part of our daily lives, just like TV was back before, in landlines. And now it's like social media. And so we are putting all of our information. I think the most telling and thing that disturbs me the most is that you brought up it has all of your information, and it could take your information, it could give it to the federal government, and somebody could knock at your door for something you have no clue about. That's scary. That's scary.
And as someone who works in radio and television news, I'm sort of obligated to talk about everything, to deal with what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein and if there's any connection to other world figures. You know, I can tell you about the 2016 meeting of members of the Trump administration and the members of big tech, where you had Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and everything. All this is connected. And I was not even on X. I left Twitter as soon as Elon Musk had bought it for that reason. And so when you have these powerful people controlling news media like Jeff Bezos in the Washington Post, we saw how he laid off 300 people about 2 weeks ago, and also donated $75 million to the Melania documentary, which was force-fed to theaters. That's one thing. Then you have Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and others controlling social media. So you have traditional legacy media, you have social media. We talk about Larry Ellison. We can talk about how the corporate media is also being controlled by these same groups of people. After a certain point, it's not about Donald Trump. It's not about him. It's about this ruling class of people, of powerful people who control all of our information, who control all of our news, controlling the telling of history, what was and what is happening. And so we don't have a voice, but we're all subject to it. How can I work in radio and television and not have a presence on social media? It's impossible. It is literally impossible. We started off the show with 6 different Instagram clips. Wow, that's nice because that's the first time I can see him because I can't get on Instagram. For example. So,
that's cold. They didn't shut you out of social media. That's cold-blooded.
And there's really no recourse. Can I start a new profile? Yes, I probably could, but the damage has been done. You're talking about these accounts, like I've had it for more than 10, 12 years, and it's not about number of followers. It's about credibility and accessibility.
And it's about what you're talking about because there's a lot of noise on social media. It's a lot of nonsense on social media. And so it's hard to break the algorithm when you're talking about things of truth, of substance, and things that they don't want you to talk about. I get tons of emails as of late, like the past 2 months, talking about I've been social banned and how let us help you get your account to where more people could see it and I mean, these are like from different companies, like you're shadow banned. And I'm like, why am I shadow banned? I have no idea why. But I think somebody is saying this is scary. Your voice must have been too powerful, which is why your account was closed. I mean, I think that they do suppress real conversations, and they want you to talk about Cardi B, and they want you to talk about just all this nonsense. That's what gets amplified. But I also want to you throw out all those big tech people. I think that people should really pay attention to Larry Ellison. What he is doing in his partnership with Donald Trump. He owns CBS. I mean, his son is in charge, but it's his money.
Yeah.
And if we think that he's not calling the shots, like the whole merger between Netflix and Warner Brothers, they're trying to stop that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you see Donald Trump constantly making comments about it. It's because Larry Ellison, he's bigger than Jeff Bezos. He's bigger than when you talk about Mark Zuckerberg. Larry Ellison owns TikTok. That's who owns TikTok too. And so these are people that are in the shadows, that are doing like privatized prisons, Geo and Core Civic, in the shadows. All of these entities are in the shadows, but they have more power than our Congress members and our senators right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Greer was saying something in the chat. Oh, yeah, she brought up a good point. Remember what they did to Sean King. We haven't heard from Sean King.
Yeah. He's basically disappeared in a public media sense. And if you think that it couldn't happen to you, well, you have a rude awakening coming. And I'm not here to say that I'm such a big deal or they're trying to suppress my voice. I am saying I can't rule it in and I can't rule it out, which means that I don't know why I got here or how I got here. And what happens after now, I can't tell you. And if you think it's only me, then you're kidding yourself. There are other people going through the same thing. I just happen to be one who's going to speak out on it and bring more light to it. And hopefully there'll be some accountability. But I'm letting you know, I'm not going back to Instagram. I'm not going back to Threads. I'll keep my Facebook account as a way of being able to disseminate clips from this conversation or other conversations or other radio and television work that I do, but it's eyes wide open going forward and knowing that at any given moment, all this could be taken away because we don't necessarily own this. Yes, I know about Spill and other Black-owned social media, but still you have to be able to talk to beyond just your own community. I know there's Blue Sky and everything like that, but you're seeing a coalescence of people and information sources where if you're not within their information distribution systems, you're effectively out of the information game.
Right. So you're saying if Meta came back today and said, okay, we're giving you back your handles, you don't want it, you're done.
I don't know. It's one of those things I always say, I'll jump off that bridge when we come to it. There has to be, if they came back and said, here are your handles, there has to be some sort of explanation. There has to be some sort of reckoning. There has to be some sort of dissection of how we got here, because otherwise they could give me back my account today and it'd be taken away tomorrow again. In other words, I don't know whether it was a hack. I don't know whether it was some sort of decision or made by AI. I don't know. And so if it's not rectified, then ostensibly it would happen again. And I have to assume that it would happen again anyhow, because I'm still going to be me. I'm still going to be talking about the same discussion topics in the same way. So I have to find something else or some other way to do it. But look, I stand on manhood. And that's about trying to strip me of my manhood as far as being able to have a voice. And I'm not in the business of just repeated abuse for the sake of abuse. Trolls are one thing, but when the platforms are doing it, I've never been in Facebook jail. I've never been had an account on suspension. Never, because I am super aware of the terms of service and what can be done. And even though this still happened to me, I didn't like social media to begin with. This just gives me another reason to avoid it.
Right. And you can't bank on it. You know what I mean? All these creators and situations that are happening, if they just pull the rug from up under you, you're toast. If you've built your whole career on being a content creator or an influencer. And so that's a cautionary tale, folks. Let's move to the next story, where Amazon's Ring cancels controversial partnership with a tech company known as Flock amid privacy concerns. Now, the termination comes after weeks of backlash over the partnership and Ring's Super Bowl commercial last Sunday, which advertised a feature for finding lost pets that sparked concerns on social media about unwanted surveillance. And so, hey, people did not like that Super Bowl commercial. They were spooked and they spoke out, and now Flock is out.
And let's not forget Amazon, Ring, Jeff Bezos. There's a through line here as far as information and your unknowing use of your information. And if you didn't see the Super Bowl ad, it had to do with finding a lost dog and how they would partner with other people's Ring cameras, supposedly if you'd opt in, where your Ring camera information and videos could be used to map out the city and find your lost dog if it showed up on anyone's Ring camera. But you can see how that can be misused. You can see how and there've already been instances of people misusing Ring and that internal data for nefarious purposes. Invariably, it's going to be misused. And if you combine it with law enforcement and surveillance, there's invariably going to disproportionately impact us, as anything having to do with law enforcement has always disenfranchised us.
And we have to think too, like even Alexa, she could be listening to us.
She's always listening to us.
Right. And so that's something that you have to pay attention to too. So we think all of these things are for convenience, but it's really a way for the government to tap in and find out what we're up to.
Information brokers, that's the future.
All right. So let's move on to Kimora Lee Simmons. She is reportedly refusing to vacate a lavish $25 million mansion her estranged husband purchased with stolen funds. Now, the former runway model turned baby fat founder, thanks to Russell Simmons, and of course, she's a reality star, has reportedly lived rent-free in a luxury property for the past 5 years. Now, this is according to the New York Post. The Beverly Hills mansion was purchased in 2017 by her estranged husband. And so with the funds, they're tied to this embezzlement scandal, which he is now in prison for. And Kimora is just saying that she's not getting out. I'm not leaving. And this is according to Black Enterprise. And it's just interesting, this whole scenario with Kimora Lee Simmons. And you think about Russell Simmons and why is she keeping his last name? And she got another husband and she living in the house. It's just a lot going on. Okay.
It's a lot going on, but can we please call it what it is? She's squatting. She is squatting in this mansion. And I don't have any tears to cry because they want to remove her and evict her from a place where she is not the owner. In other words, we know it's Russell Simmons and the money is tied.
Well, no, it's not Russell Simmons. It's her husband. What's his name? Tim Lasner. That's her husband. Yeah. And so remember, they allegedly took money took money from Russell Simmons, and that was the initial fallout between her and Russell. Russell claims that they took money from him.
Well, it's dirty regardless. In other words, there's not a claim for Kimora Lee Simmons to own that house. So they're squatting. And if you know anything about real estate, it's very difficult to evict a tenant who is in the house, but she has no legal claim. I think we can agree on that. She has no legal claim to be in the house. She admittedly has not paid any rent or continued the mortgage, so she can't even in good faith argue that she should remain there. Now, how this plays out, it's probably going to be a protracted legal battle, but it's pretty simple. You know, if you are not the owner and you are not paying the mortgage or the rent, if you are subletting, then you have no legal claim to stay there. But it's just a matter of time before eventually she will be forcibly evicted.
Oh, this is hilarious. Mike V says she better hope ICE don't come get her up out of there. That's funny,
but not that funny. You know,
right.
They know where to find you.
Okay, and they know how to find you. Some sad news though. After decades of being a civic watchdog, the Richmond Free Press has officially closed its doors. Now, the paper's publisher Jean Patterson Boney posted a farewell message titled "Free at Last" on the paper's website and social media, marking the end of its 34-year run. Now, of course, this is sobering for many Black newspapers as they struggle with funding and because of Trump's DEI mandate. You know, a lot of companies are not freely giving. And we know the importance of the Black press when we talk about local news, graduations, cotillions, you know, HBCUs. These are vital lifelines within our Black communities. And so we encourage you to support your local Black newspaper, like, subscribe, and of course, like and subscribe to us, as we are the hub to bring you the news for Black Press America. So like, subscribe, donate. If you could pay for a Netflix, a Hulu, and get that information, make sure you support Black-owned media.
It's a difficult time, if only because many newspapers, let me talk about it within media terms, newspapers have made, it's been a very difficult transition. Like Black Press has made the transition to the social media age as we're talking to you on YouTube, and there's a video aspect to it. But newspapers, having nothing to do with just the Black press, have struggled. Like the Los Angeles Times out here is barely treading water, for example, and many traditional newspaper outlets have been struggling because we live in an online social media world where people, by and large, are not reading full articles. They're looking for the Instagram video, the TikTok video, and they get their news from social media sites. All this is connected. And if you control news, you control social media, you control the larger information dissemination, it makes it very difficult for Black press and newspapers to compete with or against that. All these things are working together and unfortunately working against Black press in many instances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you guys support us, like, subscribe, tell a friend, share it, let them know that we need to support Black media, because these stories that we're talking about are not really being amplified in mainstream media today. And we know that mainstream media is predominantly controlled now of what they can and cannot say. So let's jump into a couple of sports headlines. The year of the hype man continues. So after stealing the show in Paris in 2024, Flavor Flav has officially touched down in Italy for the 2026 Winter Olympics. And he's not just there for the vibes, y'all. He is financially giving to the athletes. Now, he's the official sponsor for and hype man for the U.S. bobsled and skeleton teams. Now, he signed a 5-year sponsorship deal to provide financial support for those athletes, many of whom work multiple jobs to fund their Olympic dreams. So this follows his 2024 move where he helped pay rent for the discus thrower Veronica Farley and sponsored the women's water polo team. He is single-handedly changing the model for how celebrities support the Olympic sport. I thought this was huge because I didn't realize that he was actually funding and paying for these athletes to participate in the Olympics. I think that's huge.
It's huge, and I don't know if people understand the financial hardship that most Olympians go through, be it winter sports or summer sports. I was saying earlier that I work with youth. I officiate youth basketball. And one of the people that I officiate with, I'm not going to tell you her name, but she's a track athlete, an Olympian who went to Paris and competed, but she still has to find odd jobs just to support her life and also her remaining track career. It's very difficult for Olympians to retain their amateur status, because a lot of them still have to be quote unquote amateurs, and also find some sort of sustaining income, not for their sport, just to live. Saying nothing of the training regimen and the training supplies and the facilities needed to continue in their sport. It's very difficult, and it's not often that you find people like Flavor Flav who are going above and beyond to support people, in this case, Olympians. And let's not forget, Flavor Flav has supported other endeavors like Red Lobster and so forth. He is a giving person. And when you combine that with other ventures, you can see that he can have an outsized impact on his community beyond just what he's been doing in rap and hip hop music. So I salute Flavor Flav. Good on him.
I just think that it's huge, and I'm thinking about like this weekend, and we had all of these activations from Nike and Reebok and Puma, and you would think that these types of entities would sponsor these athletes, right? The Olympics is the biggest sports world stage there is. Comes around every 4 years. I just find it interesting that none of the Nike at the forefront. It would be nothing for, it's a tax write-off. It could be a tax write-off. Why aren't they sponsoring these athletes?
Well, there are levels to this. They may sponsor their gear. You know, they may sponsor the tools of their trade. They may even have some degree of stipend that they may pitch in on. But we're talking about this 4-year cycle, and it's more than just the Olympics. It's the 2 years leading up to the Olympics. They have housing requirements. They have clothing requirements. Some of them have kids and families, and it's very difficult to maintain that Olympic dream financially unless you have outside assistance. And I would think most people would be surprised at how little financial assistance is provided by these big companies. Now, they provide some assistance, but not a lot of assistance.
Well, let's jump into this next NFL story, where the discrimination lawsuit against the NFL, led by former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores, is going to head to court. Now, a federal judge over the matter determined that the lawsuit over the NFL's alleged racist in hiring practices can bypass the league's arbitration process. Now, according to the AP, Flores, this black man, sued the league alongside 2 others in February of 2022 after his firing from the Florida franchise, shining the light again on the NFL's Rooney Rule. What are your thoughts on this?
For those who don't know, the Rooney Rule was put in place by Art Rooney, one of the original founders of the Steelers and owners of the Steelers, where that if you're going to hire a head coach, you have to at least interview a minority candidate, which was positive, but it didn't necessarily lead to actual black coaches being hired with any relative regularity. And so even though the league may be 70 to 75% black as far as players, coaching staffs are still overwhelmingly white. And there's also this, there are fewer black head coaches. And when they are head coaches, they're more quickly fired or don't have the degree of latitude, and most often are not likely to be rehired as a head coach with some other team. And you will see white head coaches go from team to team to team. And you will see also white coordinators hired with greater frequency, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams, or coaches on a lower level, which lead often to head coaching gigs. In other words, it's a closed society when it comes to blacks as far as becoming head coaches. And Brian Flores' suit has to do with all of that, is where we're not even getting the interviews. And if we get the job, we're fired more quickly and less likely to get a chance at another job.
So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, and even if it affects him, because I see he's the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings right now. And so do you think that this will impact, his current job?
I have to believe that anytime you sue your employer, that it doesn't mean that you will have a bright future in that league. Of course, we can look at Colin Kaepernick and how he sued the league and he had no other shot in the NFL. But generally, if you're going to sue the NFL, it's not that there's going to be collusion per se and people won't hire you, but your name becomes toxic and people stay away from you. I don't know if this is going to help his career, but I say good on him because what he's doing is going to help other people's career, people who are going to come behind him and benefit from the sacrifice that he's making in the here and now.
Yeah, for sure. Let's jump into some Black facts before we get out of here. And I thought these Black facts were parallel in a lot of sense to some stories that we talked about today in just the state of our nation right now. Let's go all the way back to 1847 to the state of Missouri, where the state legislature passed an act prohibiting Negroes and mulattoes from learning to read and write and restricting free Black people from migrating to the state.
All I can say is the theme today has been about information and is about history. And if you control how history is told, why it's told, and to whom that is told, then you can control a people. And there's a reason why, dating back to slavery, Black people were not allowed to congregate with the exception of going to church. And even in that, we were disallowed being able to learn to read or even anyone teaching us to read. If we ever got to the point where we valued education as much as we value entertainment or being entertained, that would do us a lot of good. But when we see history, we know history, we were discouraged from learning about history, learning about our own history, or even reading in general.
Yeah, I mean, and then when we look at this was state issues, which was the swell up that led to federal governance over civil rights and over voting rights. And here we are now, it's in reverse. We need the states to protect. Let's head to 1951, where New York City Council passed a bill prohibiting racial discrimination in city-assisted housing developments. And the first person that came to my mind was Donald Trump and his daddy.
And for those who don't know, in the early 1970s, Donald Trump and his daddy were successfully sued for discrimination over their refusal to rent to Black tenants. And if you know your history, there's the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which dealt on some level with these racial covenants, which precluded Black people from living in certain neighborhoods or precluded from buying in certain cities. And so all of this works together. We want to talk about the wealth gap. We want to talk about the education gap. All of this has been put in history, and there's been legislation put in place to disenfranchise us. And there was also subsequent legislation which had to be enacted to make sure we had some degree of equal access, in degree of housing, in reference to education. And once again, we have to talk about social media and the control of information and how history is told and how news is shared and how history will represent a moment just like right now.
Yeah, I mean, and it just reminds you, everything is not equal. So when Black people, or when we're talking about these issues, when we're yelling about these issues, because look at the history. Ain't much changed, and we're still fighting the same battles, and it's like it's going forward and it's going backwards. But these issues have been the plight of Black Americans in this country. It is a constant fight for us to just have a decent life. Always, you can't even be on social media.
But look, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're just fighting to have our own space in many ways and be respected in that space. I can look at the chat comments right now and see the trolls are going wild with all these racial comments and are proving what we're talking about. In other words, I can be in lockstep with the terms of service and not violate them, and I can lose my threads and Instagram overnight. And then we have these trolls right now in this very space saying anything and everything without consequence, because There has been a racial arsenry which has been committed on us since we came to this country. This is just the latest example of it, where there are rules for us, how we are policed, how we are allowed to move or exist that don't exist for other people.
I mean, great point. How they can say whatever they want in the chat, right? We don't go in their YouTube channels and their racist column. We don't care. We over here listening to Jill Scott. We over here living our best life the best we can.
Minding our own business.
Minding our own business. We don't go on YouTube looking for nobody. But what we want to participate and talk about. They constantly in the chat they are, like I say, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And when you think about slave catchers, when you think about slave owners, when you think about the KKK and the racists, them people in the chat, they are their ancestors' wildest dreams. And they're living up to the disgust and the ill-vile people that their ancestors were.
And that's why I don't like social media for the most part, because I wouldn't like these people in my life. I don't want them in my life, not because of who they are, it's what they do. I wouldn't like those people in my house. So why would I want you in my space in a social media sense? So, this is a very precarious time, but there are a lot of lessons which can be learned in this moment where, I said it before, I'll say it again. History doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it does rhyme. It does echo. And these are the echoes of Jim Crow in the sense of trying to make sure that Black people stay in a certain place and also are terrorized wherever they are.
And Dr. Marilyn says Jill Scott's new album is fire. I agree. Have you heard it yet? Mo?
I have not.
I think that it will soothe your soul. It speaks to what is happening right now, and how we're in our own bubble and how we can encourage each other. It is a masterpiece. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that we waited all this time because it was worth the wait. I encourage everybody to go listen to Jill Scott's new album today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Do it today. Mike V says, minding our own Black business. We do it so well. And they can't stand it. They cannot stand it. Orange G says, I'm telling y'all, block them and let them talk to themselves in space.
They're like roaches.
They're like what?
Back.
They're like roaches. Roaches. Okay. The roaches are in the chat. That's the new term. The roaches are in the chat.
Lights come on, they come out.
Man, tell me about it. Okay, and our last Black History fact today takes us back to the top of the show where we were talking about the NBA All-Star and just how much fun you brought up, like what it used to be back in the day. Yeah. So in 1972, Wilt Chamberlain became the first NBA player to score 30,000 points. Unbelievable. Who scored 30,000 points today?
Well, now it's a more routine occurrence with the three-point line, which was introduced in 1980. And Wilt Chamberlain is down maybe to the 8th or 9th as far as the all-time scoring list. And you have LeBron, who I think recently passed 43,000 points. Each record is there to be broken. When Wilt Chamberlain passed 30,000 points, they thought that would never be broken. And then you had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who finished his career with more than 38,000 points. And they said, well, that record will never be broken. And now you have LeBron, who has more than 43,000 points as far as regular season. And we believe that will never be broken. And it may not for a number of reasons, because you do not have the high school to the NBA pipeline like you used to, where now they have to play at least 1 year in college or at least 1 year post high school somewhere else. So that takes out the possibility of having the length of career. I don't know if someone's going to play 23 years like LeBron has, come straight out of high school and still play at that high level throughout the totality of his career, of their career for like 23 or more years. We may not see this again. But that's why we like the sports, because you get to see generational talent. You only maybe see once a generation. You had Wilt Chamberlain in the 50s and 60s. You had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the 70s and 80s. And now you've had LeBron as far as scoring leaders from the 2000s on.
He seemed very somber over the weekend. He was asked yesterday about retirement, and his response is, "I just want to live." What are your thoughts? You think that this is it for him, or he has one more season left?
I think he's going the direction of most professional athletes, dealing with his own mortality, really realizing the player he is today is not what he was yesterday. And even though he still plays at a high level, he's not the LeBron of 5 or 10 years ago. He can do it in spurts. And so he's grappling with, do I want to be that athlete who held on too long? And there's this visual record of his decline and being unable to be the LeBron he was, or going out with the last memory being still a dominant player. And his decision is going to be his decision. I don't know. He has most of the records that he would ever want to have. So I don't know if it's stats based. I don't know if he'll have another chance at a ring if he stays with the Lakers or even goes to some other team. But yeah, I believe it's going to be either this year or next year. Most definitely, if he plays next year, that'll probably be his last season in the NBA. There's nothing more to prove, and there will be no team who's going to pay him worth his time.
Now, does he stay with the Lakers, or is he traded?
I think he's gone at the end of this year. I think if he has one more year, it'll probably be in Cleveland. That would be my guess. He'll finish his career where he began, because right now he's a financial albatross for the Lakers. Even though he plays at a high level, he's not getting them, even with Luka Doncic, any closer to a ring. So it's counterproductive not only for him, but for the franchise to move forward.
Is it a mutual agreement, or does somebody make the call?
I think it might be mutual at this point, where the relationship will have just run its course. LeBron has done plenty for the Lakers, having nothing to do with just winning a title, merchandising, visibility and notoriety of the franchise. They're on TV more often because LeBron James plays for the Lakers. He has value to the franchise. But as far as on-court value, that relationship, I think, has run its course, and there's nothing more in a competitive sense that he can do for the team. And it's probably easier at the end of the season that both parties just go their separate ways.
Last question. A lot of people talk about how the NFL has messed up the game because they put the games on too many platforms. Like one day it's on Prime, the next day it might be on Netflix, the next day it might be on NBC. Do you think the spreading out of the games, because everybody doesn't have every app, right? And so you can't follow your team the way they used to. Do you think that the NBA, was that a good idea or a bad idea to spread the games over different platforms and channels?
It's not just the NBA dealing with this question. The NFL has been dealing with this question as far as, is there value added for the consumer like you or me? Because I have a Peacock subscription, am I more or less inclined to tune into the NBA All-Star Weekend because I have another way to find it? Or is it a discouraging effect because you don't know where it is? Or, if you don't have Peacock, do you know that it's on NBC? And that's the thing. It used to be where football, Monday Night Football's ABC, and then they went to ESPN, and now it's also on Prime. So all the professional sports leagues are dealing with the streaming component, maximizing revenue, maximizing visibility, but not confusing and losing everyone in the process. And with the NBA, since you asked about the NBA needs to decide what the NBA All-Star Weekend is going to be going forward. Is it going to be a nighttime event? Is it going to be a daytime event? Because the NBA Weekend this year, a lot of the events were starting at 2 o'clock on the West Coast.
That threw me off. That threw me off yesterday that the game was on at 3 o'clock.
Right.
I know it's 6 o'clock Eastern time, but I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, wait, the game is on. I missed Brandy. I had to go back and find the clips.
People coming out of church like, what's going on? The game's already started.
Right. Yeah, it's very confusing. And it wasn't broke. If it's not broke, why are you messing with it? Leave it alone.
I'll give the NBA this, and I know we're closing. Let me just say this. The NBA, they're very nimble in the fact that they're willing to try things. They're willing to experiment. They're willing to change things and not wait 10 years at a time. They changed the All-Star game format, USA versus the world. I like that. They brought in the Rising Stars Challenge about a decade ago. They're willing to experiment and try new things, but some experiments fail. Some experiments may turn people off. And also, some of the appeal is the history and consistency, where it used to be East versus West.
Right.
You could depend on the slam dunk competition. You could depend on the skills challenge. That's part of the appeal, because with All-Star Weekend, you get certain things. Like you go to McDonald's, that certain things are going to be on the menu. To the NBA's credit, they're willing to change, but maybe they've changed too much, too fast, too soon.
And on that note, we want to thank you guys for joining us today. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow with more news, more views, opinions, and of course, the Black Experience right here on Black Press USA's morning show. And don't forget, for the latest in Black news, you can head over to blackpressusa.com. Thank you, Mo Kelly. We always love to have you here. You are welcome anytime.
Thank you for offering. Thank you for having me.
Peace out, y'all.